Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Parlay Revival. After getting pretty severe diesel bug in one of my tanks, I share with you my fuel polishing system design, which I think is the ultimate solution for any boat with two separate fuel tanks. Except, I struggle to keep the flow rate low enough for the Raycor filters to keep up with. So you can watch me fumble my way through that ordeal before we continue to rebuild the hulls after grinding out all the blisters we found below the waterline. We mix it up with some polyester repairs along with some epoxy ones after grinding down to the balsa core in quite a few places. Hope you enjoy this one, and make sure you subscribe if you're new here and you like some pretty wild boat work. Okay, we've been hauled out for a couple of weeks now and we haven't started the engines for that 2 weeks, so we're going to run them. We're on the hard, as you know, but so you can run the engines, you just have to feed it some water. The reason we do it is that it circulates the oil around the engine and keeps it all nicely lubricated and protected, but also it's been sitting with salt water in it, and that's not good for an engine to have the salt water just sitting inside. It becomes a little bit more corrosive and everything when it's sitting, so we're going to flush it through and then it'll have fresh water sitting inside it. I'll show you how we run the engines. So we just put the hose straight into the strainer box and then we can run it. Okay, and we also flush the water maker once a week. So we just run the hose straight down to the water maker and make sure those membranes are staying nice and wet. The fresh water goes through a carbon filter first, so if there's any chlorine in the tap water here, hopefully that carbon filter helps take that out. So yeah, engines are flushed and water maker is flushed. Alright, let's talk about fuel transfer. So I have designed a system and I want it to do three things. I want to be able to polish fuel from one tank through the existing rake. We've already got Raycor water separators on the boat, so I thought, why don't I just use those instead of buying another one? So I want to be able to take diesel from the tank through the Raycor and back to the tank. I also want to be able to take fuel from one tank and send it to the other tank, because at the moment we got no way of doing that. And I also want to be able to have an engine pull fuel from the other tank on the other side of the boat. So I think I've bought everything I need. Got 50 feet of fuel hose and all of the components here to make this happen. Okay, and there's one unknown in my system here. The Raycors can handle 3.75 liters per minute going through them. And I was almost about to buy this 3.7 liter per minute pump, but then I realized that that was for a 1/2 inch hose. So we're using the return lines of the system, so there's minimal amount of modification here, but it goes down to 5/16, which is this size. So I bought this pump here, which will do 10 liters per minute. So that's 10 liters per minute through this size hose, but we have this size hose. So it's going to restrict the flow, and it's quite a long distance. So I'm hoping, and this is a complete guess because it was hard, I couldn't figure out what the flow rate would be for diesel throttled down to that diameter. So hopefully it does 3.75 or less liters per minute. This pump was 150 bucks and I can't return it once I've put diesel through it. But I feel like by the time it's gone through the Raycor filter and all of the hoses at this diameter, it should come out somewhere around 3 liters per minute. That's my guess, so stay tuned to find out. All of the fuel hose that I'm adding to the system is 3/8. It was readily available and I've got all the parts. But the existing stuff is 5/16, which is a bit smaller. I'm just going to make sure I bought all the connections. Let's roll some music. Okay, so this is my setup. I've just put this valve on the wrong side. I want to put it on this side. This is the supply side. So this is coming from port tank, and this is coming from starboard tank, and then it's going to port tank or starboard tank via the return lines that already exist from the engine going back to the tanks. But I never want fuel to go through here and run through, like back feed up the return to the engine. So I've got these one-way valves. Fuel will flow from the engine into the tank, but if I'm transferring, it'll never go back up to the engine. If I ever want to run one engine on the opposite tank, I bought these. I'm going to put a valve on the return lines of both tanks because they don't have one at the moment, so I can shut off that tank. If I open up both of these valves and both of those valves and keep that one closed, the engine through a series of hoses will be able to pull from the opposite tank if I close these valves.
I know this all sounds very complicated, but with a few instructions next to the system with labels, everything will be clear on how to polish or transfer fuel from either tank. Even if I forget to close any of the valves after a fuel transfer, the engines will still run perfectly without any hiccups.
If you left the valves like that and didn't isolate the tank, the engine would actually pull fuel from both tanks via that. So I think I've covered all my bases. Now we got to just make sure that this isn't pumping too much fuel and the fuel flow is less than 3.75 liters per minute. I'm going to use this Loctite 577 that I bought. It's fuel grade thread sealant for all of this stuff and for the tank lids as well that we're putting on there. So I'm just going to rig this up temporarily, and if it all works out, then I'll do it with this. Oh, you'll see one thing in the drawing there, or maybe you can read it, maybe you can't. It says meter. That is a fuel flow meter, and that obviously is just so I know how much fuel I've transferred or polished at any given time. And I have some exciting news. The chosen one, Stephen McLeod, is going to be bringing that in a couple of weeks. So he wants to help out in the yard and then take the boat up to Phuket to carry on with all the jobs up there. So he'll be around for a couple of months. He's great to have around and he's so helpful. If you don't know who I'm talking about, we called him the chosen one because he was chosen to sail across the Pacific with us. So we had one spot that we offered to the patrons, and I said, send me a video if you want to do this big trip from Mexico to French Polynesia. Send me a video of what it would mean to you. And Chosen sent me this really heartfelt video about how much it would mean to him, and a bucket list item and a lifelong goal and all that kind of stuff.
Not very good at self-promotion, I guess. When I'm old and gray and sitting on a park bench, I'd rather say I did than I could have.
So we chose him, and now he's gone from being Stephen to the chosen one to Chose, and we've even shortened that down to Cho. So Cho's joining us. I was also going to put a timer in there, so if you start the pump it'll automatically shut off after a set amount of time, but I've decided to not do that because I feel like that would make me or whoever's doing the transfer a little complacent and maybe rely on that, and if it failed, you could end up with this system, you could end up overflowing a tank and sending it overboard. So what I do, like when I work on super yachts and stuff like that, when I'm doing a big important job like transferring fuel and there's a chance of polluting the environment, I put a rubber band on my finger so tight that it's almost cutting off the circulation, so I got no chance of just forgetting that I'm transferring fuel. So that's what I'm going to do.
So I started by adding a valve to the return line of the engines, as that is how I would isolate the tank if we wanted to run the engine off the opposite tank. This system would really have come in handy when we discovered diesel bug on the port side, as I could have just isolated that tank and run both engines off the starboard side. But all of a sudden I heard an explosion upstairs, which had me a little lost for words.
Oh my god.
Look at the ceiling. Look at the ceiling.
This can just exploded. How does that even happen?
Yeah, it's gnarly though.
Was your head over it?
No, we walked away for a
luckily
second.
I didn't. It made such a loud noise. But the can legitimately just blew up 10 minutes after I opened that hatch.
Temperature change in the floor is probably really hot and up here is colder.
Oh,
Stink or what?
yeah.
Yeah, it was probably rotten.
It's sour ass.
How does it just...
Oh,
So I think I was gonna cook with that the other week.
With this?
Yeah.
It's gone bad. Imagine if you picked this thing up and it just exploded in your face. It's all over the ceiling.
It stinks. Ew, it stinks.
it's like spew.
Jamie's used to it or something. Let him go.
Have you guys ever seen that before? I thought it was pretty shocking that there could be enough pressure to blow up the can. Anyway, back to the fuel transfer system. I hopped down into the engine room and used some of the existing fuel lines to test what kind of flow rate we would get from our new 10 litre per minute fuel pump. I wanted the flow to be below 3.75 litres per minute, but I didn't want it so slow that a fuel transfer would take days to complete.
Okay, so I've put a brand new Raycor filter in, and I've just temporarily taken the feed for the engine and sent it to the pump, and then we've got the hose coming out of the pump into the drum here. So that is the shortest run that we'll ever have and the cleanest a filter will ever be. So right now will be the maximum flow we'll ever see. When we run it to the other side of the boat, it's a longer fuel run, so the flow rate will decrease as the length of hose increases. So we'll see how many liters per minute, but we're going for 3.75 max. It says it's self-priming to 5 feet, so it's going to be about 3.5, 4 feet above the bottom of the tank. So it should be able to prime itself. There's another reason I want the flow meter there, so I can actually see that it's pumping fuel. But I'm just going to steal the power for now, straight off the starter motor here. See what happens. That's closed, that's closed, that's open, that's open. There we go, there we go, there we go.
What?
Got really hot. I didn't have a good connection on there. Did I do this hose clamp up? Okay, just fix that little leak. Now we're gonna do a 60-second test, and then we'll measure how much fuel came out. Open, start, go. Flowing? Okay, that was 60 seconds. Let's see how much flow. Imagine if it was exactly 3.75 liters. That would be legit. Damn, 5.7 liters per minute. So it's a little bit more flow than what Raycor said to put through it. But I'll do some research, find out what that means. As long as it still effectively works as a water separator, which might be the problem. If it flows too fast, maybe the water won't separate. But the same amount of fluids going through the filter, the actual Raycor filter, so that part wouldn't be affected by high flow. Just the water separator part, it might pick the water up and send it to the other tank. So I'll have to either buy a new pump, which I don't want to do, or I could throttle this flow down somehow. Actually, I'll just put that little one-way valve on the end and see if that slows the flow down at all. That might get it. Okay, test number 2. Oh shit, I was about to open that one. Far out. Okay, pretty much exactly the same. Didn't really slow it down much at all. So I'm gonna email Raycor, see what they say, but no doubt they're gonna say use it to spec, which is 60 gallons an hour. But it's good to see the pump working. It's gonna be really good to have this system in place. I've just gotta figure out this flow issue. Another thing I could do is to throttle the valve, the supply valve, just a little bit, and slow it down that way, and then maybe cable tie that valve in place. That's another thing I could do.
The only problem with throttling the flow too much is that it could make the pump work a little hard, causing it to overheat. So I'll have to check the current drawer with an ammeter when testing that out. But I'm pretty sure it'll be totally fine, and you'll have to watch out for that in an upcoming episode. Anyway, now it's time to do some fiberglassing.
It's dust all over the boat. Yesterday I was walking around, we weren't even doing any grinding, and I was wearing my jandals, and last night my legs were just so itchy, just from the little bits of dust around on the ground down there. So I'm not walking around there in jandals anymore. But today we are doing our first bit of polyester glassing. So we've got a couple of spots here where that cleat doesn't have a backing plate. It cracked that whole side there. Got the same thing happening over that side. And then we've got a couple spots down below that come up above the gel coat. So we want to do them in polyester so that we can gel coat over them. You guys have heard me explain all this before. But below the waterline we're doing all epoxy, no gel coat. But we've gone a little high on some of our repairs. Alright, so we're going to go start up here, I think, so that we don't drip any resin on the boat, because it gets on our feet and everything. So try to stay as clean as you can and go down. Did you see these repairs? Got the stanchion that's gone down to one layer of glass there, so we're going to build that up.
I reckon that this one was caused by the fishing rod.
Yeah,
We're catching too many.
We've put like a straight edge here so that we don't glass down the side of the boat here. Technically when we take this off we should have a nice straight edge there already. These handrails didn't have backing plates on them either, so we got some aluminium plates. They were just bolted with a washer. So anytime anyone leant on this or we catch a big marlin, you know, it was just breaking the fiberglass. So we're gonna make it stronger than what came out of the factory.
Whoa, I should be up here with a suit.
Got another big ass repair there. We fixed it and just smeared some gel coat over it to protect it. But now we've ground it out and done it properly. Okay, so this is an example of a repair that's above the gel coat line. The water line is here. So we don't want to do this in epoxy and put gel coat over it. So this repair here, this has only had gel coat removed. We haven't gone down any lower. So this repair here is going to be in polyester. This one here is below the water line. We're going to do epoxy and no gel coat over it. The epoxy is a barrier coat, then it's going to get barrier coat on top of that before the anti-foul. So this one here, we just ground into the gel coat a tiny bit, and that means we're going to have to use polyester on this one. It's just into our gel coat line. Total Boat sent us two different types of putty, filler. This is structural repair putty, which we're going to use upstairs where the cleats are and stuff. Just between the layers of glass that have sort of delaminated a little bit, but we're down to the last layer of glass, we can't get rid of it. We're going to fill it with structural putty. This has got fiberglass inside it. And then for this sort of thing, you know, this is fine, but we just need to fill a couple of these little imperfections here, a bit of foam there before we put the glass on. This isn't structural, it's just got to stop those air bubbles from coming in. We're just going to use some of this fairing compound. This is nice and light. We're using 1% catalyst for all of this polyester work. That's the minimum you could do, but it's just so hot that it's still only going to give us about 20 minutes of curing time. This stuff here is 14 drops per ounce, and we didn't know what an ounce was. We are from down under. So we've got a little scale here. This much putty is 2.5 ounces. So this would get just over 30 drops. There are 20 drops in a milliliter of MEKP, which is the catalyst that we're using. So if you did 2 ounces of filler, you'd put 1.5 milliliters of catalyst. We've still got this really useful container that we used in Guatemala and Panama. It's got a scale up the side. 1 milliliter is the same as 1 cubic centimeter, and we can fill up to 15 cubic centimeters of catalyst. So we can mix with 1 cup of this, we can mix 1.5 liters of resin. We're going to start up top while we're not too messy, and then come down here. We're going to be covered in resin. We're going to put respirators on because this stuff's really toxic, and smash it out.
Alrighty, so let's get into it. So just like with the epoxy you saw last week, we fill all the little voids and imperfections in the area before rolling on any glass to avoid air bubbles in our work. We then wet the surface of the repair and wet up the new fiberglass before we roll it on.
We're getting dirty now.
We do the small pieces first and gradually add all the bigger ones until we have reached the original thickness of fiberglass. We always try to grind out the sides to make a tapered surface that extends about 12 times the depth of the repair. So if the glass is 10 millimeters thick, we want to grind out at least 120 millimeters of glass to ensure a solid bond between the new and old fiberglass. You saw last week how good our team works together, which includes Azim and Wak from Malaysia Yacht Suppliers, and we were just getting better and better as a team the more we did.
Nice boys. Woo.
On the starboard side, we ended up a couple of millimeters lower than I would have liked, so we threw in some chopped strand mat, which is much stronger than using fillet or gel coat later to build up that thickness. All in all, I was extremely happy with how these repairs went, and once it cures, it just needs the surface scuffed a little bit before we start the fairing process. But anyway, we moved on to the bow area next, which we were hoping would go as smooth as the other spots.
Go downstairs. Yeah. Finish. So far so good. First batch done.
Where's your hand?
You know the beauty of this? Clean. Except my rollers.
Boats turn from a paradise into a war zone. This is like the last place you want to be up here. It's so itchy. Even just walking from the inside to the toilets, covered in fiberglass dust. It is so itchy, this stuff. Ugh. Can't wait till we're back in the water.
So we moved downstairs to glass up the port sides above the waterline, continuing with polyester resin. An even better option to go with here would have been vinyl ester resin, but we weren't able to get any of that here unfortunately. We continued with 1% hardener, which was giving us just enough time to get the job done in this heat, as we slowly started bringing Parlay back to her former glory. Remember from previous episodes that these areas had blisters because we had found damp balsa core below the surface. So we had opened them all up and dried them out in a tent with a dehumidifier in it for almost 2 weeks. We confirmed that the balsa was now bone dry by using the moisture meter and that it was ready to be buried in fiberglass once again. Remember, this was hurricane damage that managed to evade us all those years ago, that had either presented themselves as blisters or we had just found them using the moisture meter. Anyway, it was good to be able to sort everything out once and for all.
Okay, just had lunch, come back, and the polyester's rock hard. So we just ground down the part that it is going to overlap, and we will do this one with epoxy. Same with all of those other ones. So we should get this starboard side completely glassed in today, above the keel. Port side. I'm looking at it the wrong way. Bow's that way.
So we switched up materials and started using epoxy below the waterline. It was really demoralizing finding all of that damage behind the blisters. Then all that grinding is an absolutely horrible job, so it really is quite rewarding when you start to lay up a bit of fiberglass, especially when it all goes smoothly like this. The four of us were like a well-oiled machine now, working together in unison to get the job done, unlike some of the wildlife here where it seems like it's every man for himself. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode guys. Subscribe if you're new here, and we'll see you same time next Sunday as we continue to rebuild the hulls of Parlay. Cheers guys.